AI comes with strings attached, with some implications that we're not prepared for. Just because AI is a glamorous technology doesn't mean it's the answer to every questions we have. I'm thinking more when it comes to AI and its adoption and diffusion. What's ahead of us is a human adaptation problem than anything else. So how do we adapt to a world when a lot of the cognitive skills will be done much better than AI? Delegate a machine the most boring stuff, but let's do the fun stuff, the creative, interpersonal, exploration, whatever makes life worth living. So I think that is the narrative to say responsible AI can actually be that part of the engine that will transform it from a Trabant engine into Ferrari engine because it just gives you the competitive advantage.
Hi, welcome to the Global Missional AI Podcast, where faith meets technology and where we explore how innovation can serve the kingdom of God. I'm Joshua Seale, and I serve as the director of Global Missional AI. What if the most dangerous thing about AI isn't that it's too powerful, but that we're asking the wrong questions about it? As the faith community grapples with whether to embrace or resist artificial intelligence, there's a more urgent conversation that we're missing. Not whether AI will surpass us, but how will we adapt with wisdom and intentionality to a world being fundamentally reshaped by it. Today's guest is Maria Axente, founder of Responsible Intelligence and one of Europe's leading voices on responsible governance. Over the past decade, Maria has pioneered responsible AI frameworks at PricewaterhouseCoopers, advising organizations as diverse as UNICEF and NATO on how to deploy AI in safe, ethical, and truly beneficial ways. And she's quick to tell you this isn't just a career, it's a calling, a path that she credits directly to God's hand shaping her purpose. What I find compelling about Maria's thinking is she refuses both hype and panic. She sees the real challenge of our AI moment, not as a technical problem, but as a human adaptation problem. And she believes the faith community has something irreplaceable to bring to that challenge. Common sense, moral grounding, and the willingness to ask not just what AI can do, but what AI should do. Before we begin, a quick word from our partner, Glue. Glue is a technology platform for the faith ecosystem, providing values-aligned AI and comprehensive solution for ministry leaders. Visit gloo.com to find out more. Also, the Missional AI Summit 2026 is happening April 7th through the 9th in Santa Clara, California. This is the largest gathering of Christians working at the intersection of faith and artificial intelligence. We would encourage you to go and get your ticket now. We do anticipate that it will sell out in the next week or two. We would love to have you there, and I'd love to see you at the event. Go to missional.ai to buy your ticket now. Now let's dive in with Maria.
My name is Maria. I'm the founder of Responsible Intelligence. I've spent about a decade pioneering responsible AI, having worked at PwC, where I've advised clients globally and across industry on how to deploy AI responsibly. I would say that this was very much God's hand in putting me on this path, because for a long time I yearned to find a job where I can align my purpose with the work I was doing and leave a legacy through the work I've been doing. So God has put me in this position, and it has opened so many doors. I could not believe it. And I found myself advising organizations like UNICEF, NATO, a lot of public organizations here in the UK. And that has happened mainly because I desire to do good. And I'm certain that everyone who wishes, they have a desire to do good in the world. That's where God helps.
Maria, thank you so much for joining us on the Missional AI podcast, and so grateful for you sharing with our community today. You introduced the concept of responsible AI and responsible intelligence. Can you unpack what responsible AI entails? What does it comprise? You talked about taxonomy that was really important. How would you define responsible AI?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. When we started working on responsible AI, we didn't know what responsible AI meant, other than what the word responsible meant to start with. Yeah. But then very quickly we've discovered through some of the use cases my former colleagues at PwC US have worked on, that AI comes with strings attached, with some implications that we are not prepared for. They have seen firsthand how AI bias can slide through into discrimination, how difficult it is to potentially to control it, how the existing risk management measures are not appropriate. And from there, we started thinking, how are we able to control a technology that is so unique? It's probabilistic in nature, has agency, interacts and shapes the external environment, and has the ability to operate in time increasingly without human intervention. And out of this, we started building the foundation of responsible AI, which was the first governance, which is like, how do we work with it? And then later, as we had more and more client engagements, we added more layers. But in essence, responsible AI is a set of tools and techniques that allows us to control AI, to be in control when AI is malfunction and know what to do and what to do to redress that, being able to recognize and anticipate early on the negative impacts and address it, but also being able, as we've discussed on stage, to decide where AI is part of the solution or not. Just because AI is a glamorous technology doesn't mean it's the answer to every questions we have. So responsible AI is more about common sense thinking about what can go wrong if we want to simplify it further.
Yeah, and that message of like taking a common sense view is so important, right? You talked a little bit about how the narrative around AI often runs so far ahead of the reality of where it is at the moment. Thinking particularly about, we hear so much about the inevitability or so-called inevitability of AGI. To what extent do you believe it's possible for us to be able to control AI when on one hand we hear that it's achieving capabilities beyond human capabilities in the near future? Will we be able to control it?
I think depends on what we control. I think I'm thinking more when it comes to AI and its adoption and diffusion. What's ahead of us is a human adaptation problem than anything else. So how do we adapt to a world when a lot of the cognitive skills will be done much better than AI? And I think when we listen to the conversation around AGIs, one thing that strikes as obvious is how little clear understanding we have on human intelligence. We don't have a universal definition. Everyone understands through human intelligence different things. While, again, why taxonomy is important. But recently I got the chance to meet Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, and he was actually talking about AGI with two facets. One is the engineering AGI, which is all about the capacity of machine to crunch high volume of data. And the other one is the intelligence that is intrinsically human and it cannot be replicated. And to a certain extent, the way he described it kind of made a lot of sense, because what it's being pursued is actually the engineering AGI, is the ability of machines to replicate human intelligence, but do it in a different manner. And I think it's when we continue to compare human intelligence with whatever's being built now artificially, it's not really a comparison, because what we have is, and what we always measure is individual intelligence. But what AI is offering is an aggregated intelligence that, mimics some of our cognitive abilities and to a certain extent other interpersonal skills, but it's aggregate. So we need to start thinking about that sort of artifacts probably in a different way. It's similar if you want to think about flying, right? Since the dawn of time, humans wanted to fly. We always imagine that we will fly like birds. We will have wings like the angels. Think about Icarus. What has happened to him, right? Build the wings close to the sky and here you go, down you go. But in the end, we are flying. We're not flying as individual. We fly as a collective. We don't flap the wings, but we're still flying. Analogy. So I think it's in those ways we have to rethink how we think about AI altogether. rather than just jumping, it's this super powerful AI that's gonna come and wipe humanity. Of course, there are some existential threat about this, and there's plenty of work being done to address that. I think from our individual perspective, I think we have to be able to see how to best interact with AI to maximize our potential, and also being able to thrive in a world that some of the tasks will be, or some of the interactions will be digitized, while we want to continue to have a thriving life. Okay, delegate to machine the most boring stuff, but let's do the fun stuff, the creative, interpersonal, exploration, whatever makes life worth living.
Yeah. Is it a tension that we need to learn to kind of live within the potential benefits and acknowledgement of the likely or potential threats?
There has to be a tension. Now, I can see why the fear-mongering was necessary. As I said on the stage, I feel like we went from the extreme with AI promising huge benefits, now to the opposite extreme with AI damaging humanity. I think the reality is much more nuanced, and I'm waiting for the pendulum to swing in a more neutral position where we recognize that there are a series of existential risk and real risk that need to be addressed, but a set of benefits. And as we go along, we have to address them both as we go along, neither to the extreme of going ahead only with the benefits, as Silicon Valley has done for 20, 30 years. Let's face it. They had no regulation, no strings attached. They went fast, and we're still picking up the things they have broken. While, on the other hand, you don't want to kind of be paralyzed by fear and say, we just have to delegate our agency to a select group of people because they're the only one that can address and control it. I think this notion of control, it's a bit more nuanced. We need many eyes on deck. And while the industry itself needs to come together to replicate the safety ecosystem that exists in aviation, for example, do you ever wonder when you board the plane if it's safe to fly? No, because they're doing such a great job to keep everyone safe in 99% of the cases, with a whole host of intervention that are invisible for us.
Yeah.
I hope that we got in the same position with AI. We have that safety, but in the same time, there will be a lot of experimentation as we go as individuals. How do I want to use AI? Is it for me? Is it okay to ask GPT to write all the text before my capacity to reason and to write a text will diminish considerably? So I think those two needs to happen in parallel. Once, make sure that the industry is getting together to create that safety net that exists in every single other industry, but also we have to be able to do it in our own homes and test, play with AI and see how far do we go and what are the consequences of us relying too heavily on AI or too little.
Yeah. Some people, when they think about the ideas around responsible AI, have a concern that maybe it is too much friction for the innovation work that they want to do. Do you see responsible AI also as a framework where innovation can thrive? It can even support and augment
I'm
innovation?
delighted you actually asked this question, because this is what I'm planning to address with my new company, Responsible Intelligence. So part of my work so far, working for PwC and establishing responsible AI, is actually to go with the risk facets of responsible AI and say, AI comes with some risk attached. You need to be addressing those as a non-negotiable activity throughout the life cycle. But that's now, work that it's being done continuously by many large implementers, and it's got on its own track, and it doesn't require as much heavy lifting. But now when we're switching and we're looking, how do we build AI and adopt AI in a way that accelerates growth, but in the same time anticipates and clears the hurdles. And to a certain extent, this is where it's some might say, but it's the same thing, but it's positioned differently. And for example, if you are a startup founder, you don't want to have too many restrictions because, as you said, your capacity to innovate will be diminished. However, I'll push back and say, but we do live in a world where there's a lot of rules for safety that keeps society together. So those are the boundaries of everything we innovate. We can't just go around and break the world. And when I say break the world, I mean also, break the world in small pieces where your tool might be deployed. So if you want your tool to deliver sustainable value over time, you need to be able to know how to innovate within some rules. And yes, there is room for you to kind of push those boundaries. And that's what scientific progress does all the time. But you also have to be able to acknowledge early on where this challenge of the boundaries could mean, loss of life or could mean damage that is unacceptable. And I think to a certain extent, what I hope that I will do with my clients is to make them aware that thinking early on about this issue is not about restriction innovation. It's allowing you to grow faster, safer. Because if you, for example, build an AI tool for healthcare, there's such a sensitive domain where you need to account for so many different, first of all, rules, because this is an industry that's highly regulated around the world. So good luck to anyone who's building a tool and aims for a global rollout, because you'll need to account for different regulation in different countries. But at the same time, there are ethical issues. So you need to be aware of them. So if you want to sell your product, not just in the UK market, but in Kenya, for example, you need to be aware of the ethical issues that might emerge and address them so that the product will be accepted on that market. So I think that is the narrative to say responsible AI can actually be that part of the engine that will transform it from a Trabant engine into Ferrari engine, because it just gives you the competitive advantage.
I like that. And I guess when boundaries are clear, innovation can thrive. Yeah. Maria, in thinking about responsible AI, what would you encourage the Christian community or the faith community, how they can participate and add value to this conversation?
Probably one of the best things we can do is pray. I think I've loved the fact that the session I've seen at the conference have highlighted the need for us Christians to intentionally pray for this work and for the people who work in AI. I think it's not just pray for the work we're doing, but there's so much AI that's being built in companies where prayer is needed. Put it like this. I've just had a conversation with someone who left a big tech company, and they said it was very hard to be a Christian in this place. And that company builds and deploys a lot of AI. So the way to do it is prayer. Secondly, what we have as practicing Christian is common sense. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We know who's in control of this world. And glory be to him that he's guiding us if we let ourselves to be guided by him. What we need to do, it's be ourselves, be common sense Christian, deploy that, as I say, balanced approach, common sense in how we read the news, how we think of AI, how we push back against some narratives that are potentially harmful, and try to simplify as much as we can, but also experiment with open mind within the boundaries of our faith, because I think there's another element we need to consider is how potentially AI can be used to codify a set of values that are anti-Christian. But put that aside, what we could do is actually be intentional and mindful of how we approach interactions with AI, and with that, how we use it in the problem solving we do in our organization, not in just our day-to-day life.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Maria, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.